We need a no deal with a plan. Like
no, mate, no deal is no plan. No deal is no plan.
By a plan, I mean what we'll do with outside the EU. So trade deals. We can organise possible trade deals with other countries. That obviously,
which countries?
America, China, South America, Africa.
And you think we'll be in a stronger negotiating position as a relatively low manufacturing nation with 50 million potential customers in it than we would be as members of the largest trading bloc in the world with 500 million potential customers? Come on, mate, this is just counting.
See, within the EU, it's a great thing. It's a good thing. It has its benefits, but it has its negatives.
Of course it has its negatives, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the trade deals that you think we'll be able to sign that will put us on a better footing than the footing we're currently on as members of the largest trading bloc on the planet with 500 million potential customers for future trading partners. And that, mate, is just nonsense. Sorry.
No, I do understand where you're coming from, but I personally feel that
they've started queuing up, Nicholas. They've started queuing up already to say these desperate attempts to roll over some of the trade deals that we already have with places like South Korea and others, which the government are boasting about, which might be where you're getting your enthusiasm from. You look more closely at them and they're inferior to the trade deals that we already have with these countries as members of the European Union, because, for example, it might be a deal that only looks at product, only looks at goods, manufactured goods, and doesn't include services, whereas our trade agreement as members of the European Union with some of these countries includes services, so we're already worse off under the terms of the deals that you are now on the radio, through no fault of your own, describing as somehow better than the ones we've already got.
Yeah.
Mate, can I ask you a rude question and you won't get cross with me?
Of course.
Who did this to you? If you had to point at one person in public life who has led you to this position that you're in now, which through no fault of a ridiculous...
Nothing specific.
There must be one person.
And following. Obviously, I've followed you for a while now.
Not closely enough. Not closely enough, Nicholas.
But obviously, people are opinionated, and I think media outlets and me taking my perception of things has taken it. A lot of politicians I don't agree with. I feel like they do things the wrong way. Boris closing Parliament, I feel he didn't need to do it.
But he had to do it in order to keep people like you on side and subscribing to the belief that there's somehow something good down the road. The minute he starts having to answer questions, he has to admit that the emperor is naked, or not at least admit it. The emperor will be standing there stark rollock naked. But if he can shut down Parliament, people can still pretend that there's beautiful clothes, they just can't tell us where they are yet, or that I have got a girlfriend, she just goes to a different school, or that there is a solution to the British border in Ireland, we just can't tell anyone what it is yet. And by shutting down Parliament, and you've just nudged at this, by shutting down Parliament and depending upon the slavish deceptions of most of the right-wing print media, they can keep the idea alive that there are some beautiful robes. Just down the road after, to use your own words, after a slight collapse, the true beauty of the emperor's robes will become clear. If you voted for a man who's found to have suspended Parliament unlawfully because you believed that somehow the authority of British judges had been diminished by EU membership, or indeed that Parliament had lost its sovereignty or its power as a result, then how on earth are you processing what's happening today? An astonishing display of judicial power and strength from British judges in British courts. Not only that, but a decision that was forced by the fact that two separate British courts arrived at different and contrasting conclusions. Just think about this, please. If the Scottish court and the English court could arrive at different decisions and end up both appealing to the Supreme Court, where now do you file the idea that Brussels makes our laws, or that Brussels somehow intervenes or interferes in the delivery of justice in the United Kingdom? A Scottish court and an English court, both ending up on appeal in a Supreme Court. a Supreme Court full of British judges in Britain handing down a unanimous ruling that this Prime Minister suspended our Parliament unlawfully. Now, you have to ask yourself this question. Why did he suspend Parliament unlawfully? Well, everyone agreed on that, oddly. He suspended Parliament, although we didn't know for certain that it was unlawful when we speculated upon this, but everybody agreed, whatever their feelings or loyalties or tribal fealties. He suspended Parliament to stop it from scrutinising his attempts to get this ludicrous kamikaze Brexit over the line. As I've said to you a million times, the minute you write it down, it falls apart. You're not going to be able to get it into law without writing it down, which means the only way forward is to somehow get through the unwritten down, utterly undefined, meaningless, kamikaze, so-called no-deal Brexit. And he tried to do it. And everyone agreed on that. I mean, I'll remind you that column in the Mail by Richard Littlejohn that I referred to quite a lot at the time. And to be honest with you, the reason I referred to it quite a lot at the time was in the hope that you'd ring me up and tell me that this was not as big a deal as I thought it was. I couldn't quite believe, even in a newspaper that had the enemies of the people and the crush the saboteurs and our Remainer universities on its front page under the last editor, I couldn't quite believe that I was reading an extremely prominent journalist celebrating the fact that the Prime Minister was lying to the British public. Here you go. Haven't stopped laughing since Boris bowled the Ramonas a short one, which would have done Jofra Archer proud. Get that in the lower abdomen for a start, mate. Goodness knows how he's managed to keep a straight face, pretending that proroguing Parliament is all about preparing for the Queen's speech. So while his cheerleaders were setting off their party poppers in celebration of what they knew to be dishonest, the rest of us were sort of sitting here going, that this can't be something that you celebrate. What if it was a politician that you didn't like doing this? That's what the law is for. The law is to be blind to identity and to focus solely upon behaviour. That's why today's ruling is so significant. What we've learned with regard to Brexit is that the people who have essentially driven us to this ludicrous path are the people who never question their own intelligence. It's the beauty of being Andrew Bridgen or Mark Francois or Digby Jones. I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you're not bright enough to realise how dumb you are. That and cognitive dissonance. The Dunning-Kruger effect and cognitive dissonance will be the two halves of a looming thesis on how the hell this madness happened. But it's not over. I think we're back to where we were the middle of last year when I told you that I couldn't see how it was going to shake down as anything other than no deal or no Brexit. I think we're back there. But I thought I thought there was a possibility when I heard the voices this morning and heard the tone this morning on other programmes, a possibility that it would get through. And then I thought the reality, the legal reality, the detail, the evidence, the fact-based analysis means there's no chance at all that it's going to get through. So what this morning has really been about was the question of whether or not Geoffrey Cox would, I think we can say this now, can't we? Would Geoffrey Cox actually ignore his own legal opinion and tell Theresa May what she wanted to hear? And to his credit, he hasn't. We're very short of heroes at the moment, and I don't know that this is good news or bad news for Brexiters or Remainers, but it's good news for people who believe in the rule of law, people who believe in rules-based institutions, people who believe in experts. Geoffrey Cox has assessed all of the evidence and concluded something that the Prime Minister did not want him to conclude. And do you want to know something? Come here a minute. That's why unelected experts are a really good thing. If they can insulate themselves from political influence, they keep democracy safe and healthy.